Bula Vinaka, and welcome to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM. Now, we have as our guest in the studio today, this is from the Fiji Police Juvenile Bureau, the officer in charge, Inspector Orisi Tukana. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Luis.
And we also have our Constable Emosi Uluila Kemba. He's not a stranger, I know, but thank you also for coming by.
No, Luis.
Okay, so anyhow, our talk today will be everything concerning juveniles, and you are the best people to tell us about what is the situation of juveniles who have committed crime in the country, but not even that. I mean, even for children who have been abused. But first of all, what does the Fiji Police Juvenile Bureau take care of?
Thank you, Luis. First of all, before I actually talk about what we do at the Juvenile Bureau, I would like to just to take you back and take the listeners back to a brief history of why Juvenile Bureau and why we are set up in Fiji. Juvenile Bureau began on the 1st of April 1979. Was established in Fiji particularly to address the issue of youth crimes. That's post-independence. Soon after independence, there was a rise in crimes committed by young people, and we were established. And also, we were established because of the enactment of a law in 1974, the Juvenile Act, that sort of became the legal framework of our existence as a police service. That is our role. We started as a part of a unit in the Fiji Police Force that deals particularly with crimes committed by children. And as time goes along, we see that there's a need for us to start to move towards the protection of children in general. So we could prevent, so it allows us to prevent crimes committed by children, and also by preventing crimes that are going to be committed on children, or crime against children.
So that came later on?
Later on.
In what year about?
We started to merge the two in 2010.
I see. Thank you.
That's after a research done by UNICEF, and there's a proposal for child protection. So child protection covers both juvenile justice and also children who are who comes in contact with the law as victims or witnesses.
Now, what are the main laws to consider as a police officer serving in the Juvenile Bureau?
For the Fiji Police, we are governed by the latest law that came into effect that governs child protection, or governs what we do in policing, is Section 41 of the Constitution, which gives the rights or defines the rights of children.
Okay.
And but before that, there are other laws that predates the Constitution. One is the Juvenile Act that was enacted in 1974, and the other one is the Child Welfare Decree,
which came in later.
Came in 2010, is it?
Yeah, I see. Right.
So those are the two laws, or the three laws, that governs what we do when we are working with children. And not only that, there are other sections of the Domestic Violence Decree that also covers the protection of children, and also there are also sections in the Crimes Decree and the Crime Procedure Decree, which also governs our actions, our procedures in dealing with children.
I see. Well, thank you very much for that explanation, please. I'm getting a bit, tongue-tied here. Anyway, but can you explain briefly what the Child Welfare Decree contains? Well, we'll have Emosi to answer that for us, yes?
Thank you, Luis. The Child Welfare Decree, it came into pass in 2010, eh?
Right.
Yeah, it simply defines professionals, and identifies who are the professionals under child welfare decree. We are mandated, the professionals now are mandated by law to look into the welfare of children.
Okay, so when you say professionals, can you mention who these professionals are?
The first, there were initially 4 professionals, police
Okay.
officers,
Right.
the social welfare officers,
Okay.
medical officers, and the legal practitioners.
Oh,
Yeah, and in 2013, there was an amendment by way of insertion in the child welfare decree, which then included teachers as professionals.
okay.
Yeah, so what it actually does, it simply broadens the scope and also the responsibility of people in the government that needs to be taking care of the welfare of children.
Okay.
So it mandates us that we must report to the social welfare whenever we suspect, even the suspicion of a child has been harmed, or if somebody tells us that they believe that a child has been harmed in a certain place, we need to report and we need to act in the best interest of the child. That is what the child welfare decree is really doing.
Yes.
It simply mandates a lot of professionals to look after the welfare of children.
That's a great explanation. Vinaka, Mr. Ului Lakemba. Now, for Mr. Tukana, can you please tell us in a nutshell what the Juvenile Act covers? You said that it came into play in 1974. So are the laws exactly the same from 1974, or have you had anything added on or taken off?
The law that came into effect in 1974 was designed to protect children and gives the Director of Social Welfare a lot of legal powers, because the law actually gives the Director of Social Welfare a mandatory role to look after children in Fiji when when children come into conflict with the law or come into contact with the law as victims, as offenders,
Okay.
or witnesses. So those are what the Juvenile Act was entailed to do
Right.
when it was enacted. And the police, if you look at the Section 3 of the Juvenile Act, it actually defines the role of what the police should do when a child comes into conflict with the law, when a child becomes an offender.
Okay.
That describes our roles. So there are two agencies there in the Juvenile Act
I see.
that should deal with children.
Right.
One is the Department of Social Welfare, and the other is the Fiji Police. Department of Social Welfare looks after the well-being of the child, while our role, if a child becomes an offender, that we also protect the child from any further harm.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's something like what the Human Rights Commission too is also involved in. But anyhow, do you think police officers are well versed with the Juvenile Act and the Child Welfare Decree?
Police in every recruit courses, police recruit courses, it is mandatory for police to go to undergo training in all aspects of the law.
Yes.
And one of the laws that they study during recruit training is Juvenile Act, and all these new laws. These are it's also part of our courses.
Yes.
Other promotional courses at the academy. This is also part of it, and other short courses, other short trainings that we do. It's also part of it. So but tomorrow we will be in the West, and we will be training police officers in the West on the same. But I believe they are actually well versed.
Well,
with
thank
the
you
Juvenile
very
Act.
much, Mr. Tukana. Sorry to cut you off there, but we'll be back shortly on Speak Your Mind on your only classic hits radio station in Fiji, Gold FM. We're back on Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits. Thank you a lot for your company. We continue with our interview, and these gentlemen have been kind enough to come by to our studio today, and they're from the Fiji Police Juvenile Bureau, Inspector Orisi Tukana, who's the officer in charge, and we have also with us Constable Emosi Uluila Kemba. Now, we were talking about how I asked you, police officers, if they're well versed in the Juvenile Act and the Child Welfare Decree. You did answer yes, and you said even right now they're having a workshop because related to this.
Yeah. Luis, this is not the first time the training has been taking place. We are thankful that the Commissioner and the government supports all this initiative to develop the capacity of police especially in responding effectively to these types of issues, crimes against women and crimes against children. And the training that now going on, one is actually underway now at the academy. That's for training police officers in dealing effectively with crimes against women. The last month we were at police headquarters training our senior officers on how to handle children effectively, and also to give them some of the basic understandings of what child protection really is, and also some insights into what the laws, the changes that we have in our child welfare decree, the changes that we have in the domestic violence decree, the changes that we have in the crimes decree. Some of these changes, some of these police officers that we have were not exposed to these laws, because when they went to the academy was years ago, but the laws was, so we continually train them. So most of the police officers that are on the ground right now should be well versed with all these laws, because it is actually taught at the academy.
Wonderful. That's very good. Very important as well. And just asking about now, what happens when an underage person gets caught in criminal activities and is arrested by police?
Thank you, Luis. When we look at the Juvenile Act and also the Constitution, whenever a child, when we're talking about juveniles, now it's under 18, eh?
Right.
Any person under the age of 18 who has not attained the age of 18. Whenever anyone comes to conflict with the law, we need to have a social welfare or the parents present before we proceed with any interview. And children, because children, there is the belief that they that they need someone for their protection, someone to be there to ensure that whatever they are saying is they have a responsible adult. And when we look at social welfare it's the government department that actually does that for the government. They stand on behalf of children. So whenever a person under 18 comes to conflict with the law, we must have a social welfare
officer,
the parents.
And that makes so much sense.
Be present.
Okay, so does that happen all the time? It always happens that the parents will be there and social welfare?
Yes.
Okay, so that's really good. Now, how should police officers approach maybe teenagers who've been caught breaking the law? How should police officers approach them? Because sometimes I believe, sometimes they can be a bit rough, like talking, like as punishment, because of course they've been involved in criminal activities. Just like a teacher, you'll tell, what are you doing, you silly whatever. But maybe you'd like to explain further.
Thank you, Luis. We have a document which is called Standard Operating Procedure for Handling Children, which is the document.
Oh, so can the public get hold of this?
It's actually
it's your personal one.
No, it's not personal, but it's a confidential document that guides what police should do when it comes to working with children.
Yeah, very nice.
It defines the types of actions that a police should take when a child becomes an offender or a child becomes a victim. That not every I must admit here, Luis, not every policeman knows how to talk to a child.
Yes.
And not all parents actually knows how to talk to their children.
Yes.
So there are special skills in talking to children, in conversing with children when it comes to when children comes into conflict with the law.
Yes.
Or comes into contact with the law. There are certain skills, and we teach that skills. And we will be going down. We'll be starting our training tomorrow at in Lautoka, especially specifically on skills on how police officers could effectively talk to children and without causing harm.
Very interesting. But we'll be back for more on that. Gold FM, only the classic hits. This is Speak Your Mind. Gold FM, only the classic hits. We return to our very interesting interview here. They're from the Fiji Police Juvenile Bureau, Inspector Orisi Tukana, and we've also got Constable Emosi Ului Lakemba. Now, we were just talking about, how children get involved in crime and what police have to do when they, get arrested first. Well, obviously, they will establish their age. And then, like what Emosi said, social welfare should be there, an officer, as well as their parents. So that's very good. And another thing that I found, my thought, if a child is involved in a criminal activity, sometimes we've got the habit, from olden days, to tell them off, oh, you're stupid, and, demoralize that person, you're an idiot. But there is another way that you can handle this sort of situation. And I think that's what Emosi might be able to tell us. Because sometimes if you are too rough to someone, or, like a dog, if you bash the dog will never learn anything. So maybe if, I'm sure you are trying to get police officers to say, come on, hey, understand, talk to them nicely. And maybe you might get them not to be involved in that sort of crime. But Emosi, you know better. Let us know what you have to say.
Luis, child protection is, to be honest, it's something new in Fiji. Even though we have the Juvenile Act has been there since 1974.
Yes.
Our approach towards children, we normally do that according to the way we were dealt with.
Yes.
We never went through any formal training that would broaden our horizon, our perspective, and understanding of the development of children, so we can approach them in a way that will be able to help them develop right. Okay. So what happens now? All of us, I'm thankful that I decided to join this unit, because it was when I came to this unit about 3 years ago.
Yes.
Then I learned stuff about children that I never knew.
Right.
But how I dealt with my children was the way I was dealt with, and I thought that was right.
Yes.
And even till today, I am still adjusting to the changes.
Right.
And there is a real need for people, professionals, and parents, for us to open our doors and allow us to discuss on understanding children better. So we can then patiently work towards trying to create that environment which will be enabling to children, enable them to grow to their fullest potential. So that is the biggest challenge that even us we are facing when we go to conferences.
Yes.
People still challenge us according to their understanding of dealing with children. We are trying to bring in a new belief, a new way of thinking.
Yes.
In order for us to be able to be on par with countries overseas that have been doing this for how many decades, maybe how many generations. So children growing up now, they understand the system of dealing with children. Whereas for us, I always say that we are like the pioneers of changes.
You're very good.
With regards to children. So hats off to all the parents and for how far we've come.
Yes.
But we extend our services. If they need us to come to whatever groups or whatever part of the awareness that they want us to be part of, we can always come and we discuss.
Yes.
So maybe we could start changing our approach with regards to dealing with children.
You know, that's really interesting because, I mean, everything starts at the home. So, I mean, I'm not talking about every parent, doesn't keep a good eye on their kids. But, I mean, generally, sometimes, I've noticed like children walking around at 11 p.m. at night, and then that makes you wonder, how come they're mucking around? I mean, isn't there mother or father wondering where they are? Aren't they supposed to be in bed? So, it starts with little things like this.
One of the challenges right now, Luis, is the interpretation of the rights of children. Interpretation of the rights of children. There is where a gap is. Parents thinking that they are limited to dealing with their children and guiding their children. But the Constitution, in one of the subsection 2 of Section 41(1), it states that every child has the right to care, protection, and guidance.
Yes.
So if protecting them means you checking their friends on Facebook, then we can do it.
Yes.
Because and that is one of the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Discussion with regards to how far
Yeah.
the rights of children are and the right to be protected and guided.
Yeah, as long as, children should have discipline. I must agree with that. Discipline, but not in a way that, you use like a stick or something to discipline them. But like you said, children, I think if you pay attention to them and you teach them the morals of life from when they're young and you set an example for them, I'm sure they would be good citizens in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Luis. There's a lot of misconceptions about discipline, disciplining children. Last week we were in a conference with MOC, and we could clearly see from the responses and from the contributions, from the discussions that was going on in that meeting, of the misconceptions of discipline. Like MOC already said, that we are disciplining our children now in the way that we were disciplined by our parents. But is that really discipline? No.
Yeah.
Discipline should not be harmful. Likewise, that is one of the reasons why we have this document, the Standard Operating Procedure for Handling Children, so that our processes and our procedures does not expose children to further harm. Some of these children, even if they are offenders, they have their own stories themselves. Some of them could have been victims of abuse. Some of them could be victims of neglect at home. They have their own stories, and our role at the Juvenile Bureau is when a child commits a crime, when a child becomes an offender, we go to their homes and we dig deep, we dig behind the child and find out what is actually pushing the child forward to commit these sorts of acts. So it's really important for police officers, for us parents, for every person to know how to deal with children effectively. If we want children not to roam on the streets, if we don't want children to commit crimes, then everybody has a responsibility to care for children.
Yes, and I believe love is very important in a family. Like if be a friend to your child, so that your child can trust you. So if something happens, you'll be the first person your child will tell. Because you've been a friend as well as a mom and dad. So I feel that would help improve society.
Yes, Luis, it's the way we deal with our children. Even I have one, I've got a few daughters that are in secondary school, and because now I'm coming to understand the development of children, it's very challenging for me because I had been raising them up this way.
Yes.
Now I have to adjust.
Yes.
And also because of my professional capacity, I'm trying to be out there in the front,
Right.
leading, and it's very challenging for me in changing my attitude, especially the way we talk to our children.
Yes.
Because I can for my daughters, I can know which one of them wants to tell me something and cannot tell me because of the way I used to deal with with her.
Well, I'm really happy that you're admitting it, Emosi, and you are a prime example that it can be learned. Because you can't help it if you were brought up from small to actually be that way. You know what I mean? Like I've noticed indigenous groups, the men, they have a lot of power, and it's like, I'm the head of the house. And you're not even it's worse if your father's a ratu or something. But anyway, it's like, ooh, it's just the distance there. Oh, he's like a king. So I'm glad that you are sharing this with us, Emosi.
Yeah, sometimes the way we talk to our children amounts to abuse. Because if we look at when we look at abuse, there are four categories, four forms of abuse.
Okay, well, we'll be right back for that explanation soon on Gold FM. Only the classic hits. Speak your mind. Speak your mind on Gold FM. Only the classic hits, and we continue with from the Police Juvenile Bureau, who our guest been kind enough to come by, Inspector Ristukana and Constable Emosi Uluilakemba, who we left off just before you could explain the four forms of abuse, Mr. Uluilakemba.
Naka Luis, the forms of abuse, the first is physical abuse. That's when there is actually the children are physically abused by the use of rods or belts, and most of the time these forms of abuse leaves marks on children.
Yes.
And then we have sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is when a child is being abused because the abuser wants to satisfy their sexually gratifies them, whether male or female.
So they have no conscience to
so
control
how
themselves.
they deal with the child gratifies them sexually.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is sexual abuse.
Right.
Then we have emotional or psychological abuse. Emotional is the feelings, and psychological is the thinking. And most of the time, this form of abuse is not normally seen, but it is mostly the use of words.
Yes.
How we talk to our children, maybe call them names.
Put them down.
Yeah, label
Putting
them
down.
And studies have revealed that most people, they live up to the labels.
Oh.
Yeah, they made studies in certain places, and they have found out that that when people are labeled by, they are called something called names. Most of them live up to the labels, so it affects them emotionally and psychologically.
Yes.
That is the use of words.
Right.
Yeah, and the fourth one is neglect. It is when the standard of care that a responsible adult who has a child under their care drops and falls. So what happens? The child is then being harmed. And if you look at the crimes decree, there is a few parents have been taken to court.
Right.
When a child under 14 lost their life unnaturally.
Right.
Through drowning or road accident, and it has been found that the standard of care towards the child by the parent fell below the standard of that expected of a reasonable adult or responsible adult. So there is a provision in the crimes decree that whereby a parent could be charged.
Yes.
Manslaughter arising out of breach of duty of care.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is as a result of neglect. So those are the four forms of abuse. Maybe it's happening in the home, and
which is all wrong.
Yes, and we do not realize that some of our behaviors towards our children could be falling in one of these forms.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I mean, it's good to know because, no one is perfect. Sometimes we are parents and we overlook these things. But we shall move on with Inspector Tukana. Now, how many registered cases do you have of crime committed by juveniles so far this year? Okay, so you have only the victims?
Yeah, only. I'm sorry, Liz. I did not have the number with me right now. The number of crimes committed by children, but I have the number actually committed against children. I have cases committed against children here.
Yes.
In the last quarter, there was 364 cases of crimes committed against children. That was from January to March. January to March.
So that's 364.
364, and
Right.
from April to June, there was 248 cases.
So
According to what we have right now, if you compare what we've been doing last quarter and this quarter, we have seen there's a 32% decrease in crimes committed against children. That's when we compare the first quarter against the second quarter.
right, I can
So,
see that. 364, then 248.
248.
Yeah.
So that is a 32% decrease in numbers of crimes committed against children.
That's a
But Luis, numbers is not actually conclusive that we measure what is actually out there in the community, what is actually happening to children. We can be talking about numbers here, and we can be talking about numbers tomorrow again. I can bring numbers, but these numbers sometimes do not actually represent what is actually going on in the community.
in the scenes behind, because like you mentioned once that sometimes it's very easy to hide for
Yes.
perpetrators.
So sometimes some of these cases are not reported. There are a research done by Women Crisis Center that only 15% of all these types of cases are reported to police. So that if that's the finding of a research done by Women Crisis Center, that means what the numbers that we have here in police is only actually, we could assume that it's
Tip
only
of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's only 15% of what it's out there in the community.
Right.
That is why it's really important, not really important for us to come and talk about the numbers here, for us to come and talk about what we can do as a community,
Yes.
what we can do as a society to prevent these types of crimes from happening to our children,
Yes.
especially sex crimes.
Yes.
I know that recently the Prime Minister has been so vocal about it, and our Commissioner of Police has been vocal about these issues. And we can only do so much, but it's the members of the community, the members of the public,
Yes.
are the ones that could come up and tell us, this is what's happening here, this is what is happening here, this is what is happening here. The more we talk about it, the more we report, we should not be really scared. I saw on social media that people are scared, that people the children, that people are reporting that there's a rape here, there's a rape there, there's a child being harmed there. We should not really be afraid, that we should not be really scared that our community is, that is an indicator that people are actually coming forward and knowing that these things are not right.
Yes.
See, people have a lot of voices, and I would ask the members of the public out there to come forward and report to us all incidents of child abuse or any incidents where a woman has been violated.
Yes, thank you, Inspector. That is so true. But like what you've given me, the figures, 364 and then 248, out of that figure, sexual abuse is like the bulk of it? Or is it half or?
When we talk about crimes against women and children, you will see that our focus is mostly on sex crimes. But part of those numbers are sex crimes.
Okay, so quite a lot of it. Yes, well, I mean, that is just not on because everyone has a conscience and they should control it. But we'll be back soon on Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. Thank you for your company. And we have from the Juvenile Bureau, Inspector Risi Tukana and also Constable Emosi Uluilekemba. We're talking about a very serious issue here of how our children should not be abused in any way. You've given the 4 signs, and I mean, we should not, we should look at it, but of course I'd put sexual abuse as the one that I really, really, really hate. But we shall talk about how can the community help police in stopping these crimes.
Thank you, Luis. Before Inspector Risi talks on preconditions to sexual abuse, because now the thing is we are blaming each other. There is a blame game. When something happens, we are so angry. Everyone is raising their voices. But the real question is why did it happen, and who really is responsible. Now, when we look at a study that they made, and they came up when they looked at crime as a problem, they came up with a theory called the problem analysis triangle, or the crime triangle.
Oh.
And they found out, when they looked at crime, and they found out that crime is like a triangle. It only becomes a triangle when 3 sides meet. 3 sides meet. So what they came up with was, in order for a crime to happen, first there must be a suitable target, or the victim. And then there must be a motivated offender or perpetrator. And then crime will then become
real.
Yeah, it becomes, the crime happens when these two meet at a time and place of opportunity.
Oh, okay, I get it. You know, like how we have that saying, wrong place, wrong time, you know, that kind of thing.
So when these two, the motivated perpetrator meets the suitable target or the victim at a time and place of opportunity,
yes,
crime will take place. Now, if you look at our children being abused, when we then over this triangle, they have what they call controls. Controls. Now, for the suitable victim and the perpetrator, they have handlers, and for the victims, they have guardians. Like for children, they have guardians, and then time and place of opportunity, they have police managers. Police managers. For example, when we go to the nightclubs, we have bouncers there. When you go to a certain place, we have securities there. These are like they manage the place at the time, so that nothing happens.
Nothing happens, right?
So if you look at the children being victimized or being abused, that is happening today, I believe that there is a gap with regards to people managing the time and place where children are. So when there is a motivated offender looking for a suitable target, and then the child is coming from the church to home,
alone,
and there is no one that is not a guardian or handler.
Yes,
that is there. So
perfect opportunity.
They have the opportunity, and they can just either go and build a rapport with the victim, or they just do their
or they just
do their will, because they are more stronger than
overpower them. Man, that is so true. You know, because think about it. You know, if you send an underage child to go to the shop for you, I mean, it could be a boy, it could be a girl. I mean, you don't really nowadays. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's girls and boys. It's happening, all these sexual crimes anyway. So, I mean, that's something to think about. Don't send your child who is really young by him or herself to the shop.
Yeah, thank you much. Thank you so much, Luis. When we, Amosi has talked about the crime triangle, when all of the factors of crime comes together and crime happens. When we talk about child sexual abuse, there are also other factors that contribute to children being sexually abused. One is motivation. That the person, the perpetrator, the sex offender, must have a motivation to have sex with a child. And
so he's got it going in his mind.
Yes.
That's what you mean by motivation. He's already got it in his mind, premeditated.
I'm sharing this so that the community out there, we can lessen the opportunities or things that motivates or
gives
or
them the
environments,
opportunity.
yeah, that motivates a person to have sex with a child. Then we have external barriers. External barriers are things that around the child or the environment the child is in, that could actually stop the perpetrator or the sex offender from sexually abusing a child, and there are and the other one is the internalized barrier or what internalized inhibitions. These internalized issues. This is we have visited some churches recently.
Yes.
Talking to the churches, because the churches, the preachers, they can do this. No, there is the talkback show that we're having right now is actually heard by people in their homes and seen by people in their homes, and now they realize that that these other things then create a lot of internal inhibitions, internal barriers to people not to stop from thinking about or have emotions for a child. And the last one is overcoming the child's resistance. Moshe talked about the environment, where a child comes back from church in the absence of the parent from point A to point B, a perpetrator could come in there. But for the child's resistance, we have to teach our child not to have secrets, because some of these perpetrators, they actually use that.
Exactly.
When they groom children, so we need to build
Trust.
we need to build the child's resistance towards all these things, towards being motivated by or groomed by a sexual perpetrator.
That's very true. So, I mean, make friends with your child so that your child can trust you. So you don't give room for those predators, I'd call them, to, because it was mentioned even in the Bible. Everyone knows Jesus. He said, if anyone harms these little children, it's better you put a rope around their neck and you throw them in the sea with heavy stones. I mean, that came from Jesus. Well, I just have to end it that way. I'm sorry. But thank you so much. We've run out of time. I know I've had so much things I wanted to talk about, but maybe next time when we have you back on the show.
Thank you, Luis.
Vinakavakalevu. And let's keep our Fiji safe. On Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits. We'll join you again next week, same time. Vinaka Modemanda.